It's great seeing everyone. The goal is to give you all the opportunity to learn a little bit about data science leadership from a accomplished data science leader each week and from each other. We virtually have no agenda. Please ask questions. We'll start with a few light topics just to get things going. Don't be shy. Turn on your video camera, introduce yourself in the chat, ask some questions. We have people monitoring the chat, so we'll get to your question if you ask. All that said, I am so happy to introduce this week's expert. He's not exactly a stranger to our studio and no shortage of impressive things about him. Jonathan, why don't you introduce yourself and tell everyone what you're working on and your background?
Sure. Thank you. Thanks for having me, Rob, and our studio. Thank you for having me back. My name is Jonathan Regenstein. I'm currently the head of Data and Quantamental Research at Truist Securities within equity research. And before that, I worked at our studio for a little over 4 years as our director of financial services. So really, really good to be back and to see some familiar faces again. And I can give a little background on what we actually do, which is a question we get asked a lot. I'm sure a lot of data science teams do. We're a pretty new team within Truist Securities. And if the name Truist doesn't sound familiar, we used to be called SunTrust and BB&T, and then those two banks merged together to form one big bank called Truist. Which I don't think is a real word, but it is now. So that's who we are, and yeah. So we're formally called the Data Science and Engineering Team, and our job really is to bring what we call, and this is a pretty savvy crowd, so maybe I don't need to use these buzzwords, but we say we're bringing modern data science tooling to the world of equity research. So equity research has existed at Truist for a long time, probably 30 years. And basically it's market research at the sector level, at the individual ticker level. So, people making recommendations on various stocks, making recommendations on sectors and market moves. And so we have about 35, experts who have been doing this for a long time, but they've traditionally lived in the world of Excel spreadsheets and Excel models and traditional market data. And the goal of our team is to try to bring modern data science tooling, so things like R and our studio, but also tools like AWS and Snowflake, which haven't traditionally been used at the bank. So there's kind of a tooling aspect to what we do. There's a data aspect to what we do. So, the word of alternative data has become very hot in the financial world, which is really just data that's not traditional financial and market data. So you can think of like, NLP-based data or things like app downloads. Something we work on a lot is just taking our internal banking data, like credit card data, and just mining those for insights about the markets. So that's kind of our role, is to take modern data science tooling, take alternative sources of data, and bring all that stuff to the traditional research process, which has been rolling it along really well for the last, I don't know, call it 30 years. But we're just trying to kind of bring new processes and new ways of doing things and kind of augment what's already been a really strong business for the bank. Some sources of both excitement, but also sometimes difficulty, is that we're kind of the first data science team to arrive in our business line. So the good thing is, we get to be the tip of the spear on a ton of the cool stuff that we're working on. AWS, right? No one was using AWS before we got here. Let alone putting, our studio server and Connect on AWS. So that was a far cry. So we get to kind of pioneer all that stuff and bring these new practices. But at the same time, sometimes the pioneers don't don't survive that journey. So, we're constantly fighting the pioneers fight too. We're saying we want to do things differently, and it takes a lot of time. So we get to work on really cool stuff, but then we also have to overcome a lot of just the kind of inertia of the way things have always been done in the past. So it's pretty fun. I mean, it's a really good challenge that we get to take on, and yeah, it's been really exciting. I mean, another really cool thing about being kind of the first data science team to land here is that we really started with a green field in terms of our coding stack. So like we didn't have to come kind of have debates about Python and Julia and R. We just kind of said we're gonna start with R first, and our studio first, honestly, and just kind of go from there. So that was another kind of lucky thing that we had from being, again, the first data science team. But no shortage of conversations we've had to have about, well, what I mean, hey, what is R? Okay, we've had that conversation many times. What are these packages? What is CRAN? Where are these things coming from? Okay, how do you manage your packages? Is there a package manager? And we say, yes, our studio has a package manager. Okay, let's go examine what that is. Why can't y'all just use Tableau? We've had that conversation a million times of why we prefer to use Shiny. So we've been just digging, digging and digging and digging, and really trying to bring workflows into the way that we want to be doing them. I mean, we've even started using, frankly, our Markdown for almost all of our reporting, and just getting the templates to look and feel the way people wanted the templates to look and feel. I mean, that in itself took quite a bit of time, because everything needs to kind of flow into, everything needs to be in the right format, to just get into our like corporate template manager. So we've just been slowly taking on these battles, and then of course trying to add value along the way, which is always the most important thing for us. So those can be small things. Those can be, when I say small things, that can mean like providing data that's clean. That can be really valuable to a team that isn't used to cleaning data. It could be running models and trying to put together some forecasts for people, so doing the kind of cooler data sciencey type stuff. But we've definitely learned a win is a win. So if it's going to be a simple win from cleaning data, we go for it. If it's going to be a more complex win from trying to do some forecasting, we'll go for that too. I see a lot of stuff coming in the chat.
It looks like the questions are coming in. Could you maybe just give everyone a sense of the size of the team that you lead, and maybe just a quick note on the makeup of it?
Yeah, so we're a pretty small team. There's 4 of us right now. So one member of the team is just, he's not officially called a data engineer. It's really funny. We don't have that title at the bank. It doesn't exist. So I think he's just called like a research associate, but functionally he's really a data engineer. So he does a lot of like data harvesting, web scraping, cleaning, getting stuff into databases, just the way we need to be able to access them. And then there's kind of 2, I guess you could just call them more traditional data scientists, in addition to myself, who are of varying degrees of seniority. One of them is just recently out of college. The other one has been out for quite a while. And within Truist, we have something called the Data Science Accelerator Program, which I didn't know it existed till I got here. But this teammate went through our Data Science Accelerator Program, which is, it's actually a pretty cool program. We can talk about it later. I had nothing to do with instituting it, so I can dispassionately say it's a really good program. It's like an 18-month, basically rotational program where people apply as if it's going to be a full-time job at the bank, but instead of just choosing a job, they enter the Data Science Accelerator, which is really a chance to do 3 6-month rotations around different parts of the bank, and learn different skills and just meet different people, see different business lines along the way. So that's where one of our teammates came from. I think I blanked on, was there a second part of your question, Rob? I know that was on the team makeup. Yeah.
That's good. And we have plenty of questions to get to anyway. The first one that came in, right, if we're going to do this diplomatically, the first one that came in was from Sep. And Sep, I don't know if you're comfortable introducing yourself and asking your question. I'll take silence as I'll ask the question for you, but I'll give you a chance to ask your question.
Yeah, no, not a problem. Hi, everybody. My name is Sep. I work at Concert AI, a real-world data company. Yeah, I think nice to meet you, Jonathan. Appreciate you sharing all that background. I think certainly perhaps you triggered a lot of people when you were discussing some of the hesitancy that other groups that maybe are kind of clinging on to some of this legacy process or legacy technology. So my question for you, or maybe if you don't mind sharing some of your strategies for kind of working with that and maybe overcoming some of that.
Yeah, definitely. And it's definitely ongoing. So I don't want to give the impression that we've got it all sorted out. So, I mean, for better or worse, I mean, step one was really finding like a really good partner within the IT org who really, wanted to work with us and was really invested in what we were doing and in our success. Because that's kind of the person that communicates upstream. Not right now. Yeah, you look good. You look great. So yeah, that was definitely a really important step one. And we talk to that person at least once a week. Usually it ends up being 2 or 3 times a week. It's just like I don't know, it's been a really important, valuable relationship that, I mean, now it's been, over a year that we've been working together. And, he wasn't one of those teammates that I kind of referenced, but he's a really important part of the team. So that was huge because he kind of helps us communicate the value proposition. And then the second part of that, I guess, was really trying to get small wins along the way and frequently. So like I was saying, we'll take small victories. We don't hold out for when we have to, change the world with a new piece of data science. If we can use AWS to like really quickly deliver data to people, that's a big win for us, especially like we'll put Shiny on top of it and we can make data accessible to 20 people and people get that, that really resonates. So like simple things that resonate with people have been really, really helpful for us too. But I mean, it sounds so crazy to say this in the world of data science, but relationship building was like critical, just critical to what we did. Because I mean, especially at a bank, we're a really big company, thousands of people, thousands of requests for new technology. There's no way to avoid going through all the security scans and check marks that we have to go through. So we just want to make sure we have a good partner who's gonna help us do that. And like I said, I mean, it's still ongoing. Like we're constantly having those conversations and refining things. But also, I mean, I'll even take a step even further back than that. And this is probably more relevant, for people who are starting something new. But it was something I really asked before I even came over here, which is just really make sure that like senior leadership was bought into what we were trying to do. That was really, really important because that when push has come to shove on a few things, we've had to really just kind of go ask someone really senior to say, we just need this push through. And we always explain why, but sometimes we just kind of need to push through. So I guess that comes back to relationships too, but it's a little different from the everyday weekly relationship we have with our IT, or I guess you could really call them functionally our DevOps team. So yeah, showing value up the chain has been really important for us too. And I mean, I should also say, our leadership was already kind of invested and supportive of this, which is why we're here in the first place. so I think that's important also, honestly. Like, you know, to the extent that anyone can control this, and you can't always, but it's always good to be either at an organization or in a part of the organization where the senior leadership is really supportive of data science and what we're doing. So that's been, yeah, that's been really huge.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, Daniel, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yeah. Why don't you introduce yourself and answer your question?
Sure. So I'm Daniel, obviously. I'm a lead data scientist at Nestle, so likewise a large corporation. And we've had some form of statisticians for almost as long as Nestle has been a company. But in the more recent past, I would say in the past 2 to 3 years, we're trying to modernize, I guess what you would call more standard data science work streams. So that includes hiring folks with new different skills, myself included. And so my question, which you spoke to a little bit about earlier, but is really kind of thinking about, we tend to have many more people that are more statistically minded. They can do programming, but they're less adept at kind of doing the productionalization steps necessary to get something kind of end to end. And so just thinking about if it makes more sense to kind of upskill the folks we have to kind of have people that can kind of take things end to end, or to have really a smaller number of specialized people with maybe more knowledge on just that final piece of getting something through to production.
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's something we have been thinking about a lot. We haven't honestly quite got to the point that we're quote unquote putting things into production, though we have had to go through a lot of the process for having our production environment set up. But we've kind of been down a similar journey just for a lot of the things we've been doing. And my opinion on this, I would love to hear what other people think too on the line. But I would say that the end state will be a person who has specialization in that field. Honestly, I think upskilling is important, but more as a way so that people can communicate with each other. Like that's what we have found, that people here are so busy that it's very difficult to do like a thorough upskilling, and even in terms of just like coding and data science. You know, what we've tried to do is upskill people to the point that they kind of understand how best to work with us, and we try to learn from them how best to work with them on what they want. But ultimately, I think if it's going to be something that technical, I would say you'll need someone with those specialized skills. I don't know if anyone else has a thought on that. I would love to hear it. That's kind of my instinct for where we'll ultimately end up on this. That's how we've, either one of us will, I guess, will have to learn it, but I would imagine, well, if someone really raises their hand from our DevOps and wanted to take that on, I could see that working out. But my instinct is it would have to be a kind of a specialized skill. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe like production processes. So I'm Moody Hadi. I run new product development at S&P Global Market Intelligence. So I actually do have a bunch of apps in production in both R and Python. So this is kind of a bit close to my heart because as data scientists, the initial release is always exciting, right? Everybody is keyed into it. And I mean, I also run a team that's about 4 people. Once things go into production, we've learned the hard way that we do have to kind of give that over to some form of DevOps/engineering teams to sort of keep that going. And we've had to train a lot of the skill set in the technology side of the equation to at least understand how to control some of these processes, because future enhancements need to be extended. And to be honest, I can't dedicate like people to do minor enhancements because I have to move on to the next thing. So there is a bit of that going on. Is that where we're going, Jonathan, with it, or is, like, did I?
Yeah, no, that sounds right. I mean, I think your experience is probably more instructive since you already have apps in production. Um, yeah, but I think we're kind of getting at the same theme, which is that time ends up being a major limiting factor for how we approach whether people are going to be upskilled or kind of gain, you know, people are going to be upskilled or kind of specialists are going to be brought in. I see. I mean, I just glanced at the chat. I see kind of a related question about, you know, working with IT, which I think touches on this, and, you know, how has IT kind of gotten up and running. So I mean, I think, and Moody, again, your experience is probably instructive in this, but, you know, we started out, you know, a year ago, and really still to this day, we still have this environment. You know, step one for us was kind of getting the permission to just be our own DevOps team in the beginning, inside of a lab environment, where we could do things quickly and fast. And then in parallel with that lab environment already set up so that we could start doing the work we needed to do, you know, in parallel to that, we kind of formed that relationship with IT, and then we could kind of slowly build up our dev and production accounts. But we had the lab environment that we were administering ourselves that kind of worked the way we wanted it to work. And then we also kind of had a model that we could show to IT along the way. So I don't know if that tracks your experience, Moody, like if you started off with kind of a lab and just kind of brought, you know, the upskilling alongside that lab, or.
Yeah, I know exactly. I mean, you know, I used to have a full head of hair before, right? So, like, so you know, no, but yeah, we started like a lab, right? The internal lab sort of environment, and then invariably, we basically Dockerized a lot of basically our work into sort of RESTful services, and by that nature, kind of making it to production meant that we have to kind of transition some of those services to the software engineering team. So, like we've been lucky. Like there was big, I think about 4 years back, there was a big drive to sort of upgrade the skill set from like Java and C and .NET to or C# to basically Python, right? And then we obviously had a strong audience in R as well. And so a lot of the software engineers have actually kind of, the ones that do analytical work, they at least have a background in Python and they know a little bit about R in order to be able to maintain it and extend features. But yeah, I mean, it took 4 years or so to get to this point versus like my first app was in 2014, and that was a batch operation that to this day I still maintain myself. So, you know, so, but I think Dockerizing things and making them much more like RESTful calls makes the whole process seamless. Of course, you've got to have some form of exception handling in place, but that's much easier for an analytical software engineer, or like what used to be called a quant developer, to sort of maintain in production and extend than like necessarily the data scientists who's, to be honest, a lot of their job is more exploratory data analysis and building and forming a model, right? So that helped a lot. Like Shiny Connect is kind of interesting because once you build a very nice interface, it's very hard to sort of hand it over to the JavaScript developers. So I'm kind of in the boat where I'm learning what to do there. but yeah, I mean, it takes a bit, right? And then, but the key is like it does come top down from the CTO, and you know, to give them the sort of the, like, you know, our studio conferences. I think Lander has some conferences and things, awareness, right? So that they know to upgrade the skill set, so they're ready to sort of take over that more, what I can consider more business as usual, like version 1.0, your guys are involved, version 1.1, 1.2, 1.5. It's the software engineers really doing the work, right? So
yeah, and I think, I mean, depending on what type of org everyone's in, you know, Moody mentioned like a 4-year process, and we're about a year into our process, and I can envision it being about a 4-year process to actually get there. So, you know, big financial orgs, things just take time to get to this point. So I'm sure it kind of depends on what type of org people are sitting inside of.
There's a question from around language mandates from Ashish. If sorry if I mispronounce your name. If you want to ask your question with some context, feel free.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. I'm Ashish. I'm working as a senior data scientist at Marathon Petroleum Corporation. Jonathan, you were talking about you were deciding on whether to use Python, Julia, or R, and then you started with R. This is kind of a similar story. We started our data science team about 6 years ago with 2 data scientists. One of them were using R and one of them were using Python. And as we grew the team over the years, now we have about 15 data scientists, and now the scale is tilted towards Python, and we have about more than 10 people using Python and about a couple of them using R. And part of the reason I'm asking this question is we didn't want to, contain the creativity or talent pool that we can avail by restricting the use of one language versus other, but it seems like just there is much more talent or availability of Python resources. And also, at the same time as Moody and you were talking about, we are also in a multi-year process of setting up platforms environment to operationalize. And it seems like we are trying to set up Azure, and we have looked into some others as well, including Data Robot and everything. It seems like R is getting like a second-class citizen treatment from most of them. So how do you manage that? I mean, we also have RStudio Connect, which can do Python and Jupyter Notebook publication and operationalization, but it doesn't seem to be going very smoothly, at least with us. So how do you manage that, or what kind of challenges you see in that direction?
Yeah, so I mean, again, my experience might be a little bit different. I mean, I kind of knew, I was going to say from day one, but really like day zero, that this was going to be an R-based team, and because that's what I think is the best tool for what we do. And we're a very research intensive shop. And I think R is like a superior tool chain just for research. But we do sit next to kind of the quant development team, or I should say, we will sit next to them when we're back in the office. Right now, we just have a lot of Zoom calls with them. And they're a team of pretty heavy Python users, and they haven't really found a great environment for what they do. So they are probably going to end up just cloning our production environment and just using it as a Python production environment using the RStudio tool chain. So we haven't found it, and that's going to be like 6 months from now because things go so slowly. So we didn't hit a lot of those initial hurdles of R versus Python because we kind of knew from day one that this was going to be an R-based team. The talent pool has actually been a pretty interesting experience for us. So like I said, we have this internal data science accelerator, and I definitely would say that if there's 20 candidates per rotation, all of them will have, Python on their resume. It's a very, very ubiquitous language. But then we will find a handful, maybe 4 or 5, who are like really passionate about R, and they like that. They're excited about it. They're fired up about it. So we've been able to find like super high quality people, even though maybe there's fewer of them. And I don't know, it's actually been kind of an interesting experience because it's almost gotten to the point now that we just tell the people who run the program, listen, if there's any really, really passionate R coders out there, just send them our way. So there's probably 15 teams competing for all the Python coders, and then there's like us and one other team competing for the R coders. So we kind of get the cream of the crop for R coders. But
how much does the decision matter?
The decision about what?
Language.
Oh, how much does it matter?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's see. What do you mean by how much does it matter?
Like, how much would it impact your team to be functioning in Python?
Well, let's see here. It would impact us. Well, I don't think it would impact. It wouldn't impact the end results that we could deliver, I guess, at the end of the day. I mean, I kind of feel like there's probably really skilled Python coders who can do what we do and are. I wouldn't be one of them. I can tell you that. So that would probably be the sign that I'm back to the R world somewhere. I mean, that being said, especially for what we are, our end product is research reports and typically visualizations. So that's usually what we are building. So from that sense, I actually don't know if there's a huge population of Python coders who really want to dig into what we're trying to do and spend as much time as we do, trying to build like reproducible charts and things like that. And also, like I said, we use R Markdown for all of our reporting because we just think it's the best templating tool out there. Obviously, you can use Python within R Markdown, so that would be a possibility. I guess I don't know enough about the Python world to say whether there's some equivalent to R Markdown out there. I mean, every once in a while, I'll see on Twitter, someone will say, "Hey, this is just like R Markdown, but for Python." But then other people are like, "Nah, not really. It's not really like R Markdown for Python." But I'm not a Python person. So for what we do, R is the superior choice. And I guess I wouldn't be here doing it if I didn't think that. So and Shiny has actually also been really, really useful for us because I would say the kind of blocking and tackling of what we do, which a lot of people really just want clean data. A lot of times we're just building Shiny front ends to SQL databases so that people can like intuitively sift through data, see some interesting charts, possibly download those charts or just download the raw data behind them. So we've found Shiny to be like really useful for that. Again, I'm sure there's Python coders out there who could build the same in Python, but Shiny works beautifully for us.
Well, the next question was from Travis, and it touches on Python a little bit. Travis, I don't know if you want to hop on and ask your question.
Yeah, hi, I'm Travis. I'm a data scientist at Parsons Corporation. So I've been kind of like the only data scientist on my team recently. There's some other team members who, well, I should first say we recently got RStudio Workbench, and then I've been tasked with also getting Python up and running. And so I'm wondering how much sense it makes to really commit to using Reticulate and Python within RStudio, or should I just, use like Jupyter Lab or something on that server to keep it separate? I've had some issues with like our firewalls getting things downloaded, like Miniconda and that sort of thing.
Yeah, so we're actually exploring both paths right now, both Reticulate and Jupyter Labs. For, like I said, there's a quant team that sits next to us that's just a pure Python team, and they're not really going to be using any R. Just from my experience with them and what they've gravitated towards, they're not huge fans of Jupyter. They kind of like R Markdown better. So as long as the package management is not too painful, though I think they're used to it being a little bit painful, which is just kind of part of the deal. They've had a better experience when we've just tested things out with R Markdown and Reticulate, honestly. But and this is really just like, an N of one. They're not huge fans of Jupyter. So I found some, again, I'd love to hear what other people think about this, that, really experienced, maybe hardcore Python coders, they're often lukewarm on Jupyter. I don't know, they like it, but they're not really that fired up about it. And the reporting capabilities in R Markdown, usually just people like those so much better. But we have to do a lot of documenting and a lot of reporting. My team does, and their team does too, because they're doing a lot of trading, and they want to have a nice, I don't know, a nice record of what's been going on. So that's the route we're planning to take, is the R Markdown Reticulate route with that team. But again, that's more driven by their preference, which isn't really that skewed towards Jupyter Notebook. In fact, I would say if they were already in love with Jupyter, that, this would be kind of a nice to have, but they haven't found a great Python environment yet. And I think that, so they're kind of intrigued that there's something new out there. But yeah, the package management is the thing. If that can be solved for the Python guys, I think they'll be psyched. But that's as far as we've gone with that. We've done a few kind of demos of, here's how our Studio Workbench works. Here's the Jupyter hooks. Here's how our Markdown and Reticulate work, and here's how we can publish both up to Connect. And the R Markdown via Reticulate, I think it was just a newer, fancier tool. Also, like they've seen Jupyter Labs a million times, and have already kind of made the decision that it's not necessarily the tooling they want. But that, again, that's just, I don't know how generalizable that is. That's really just my experience with one team of Python coders that I sit next to.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, Eric, are you there?
Sure am. Yeah.
Welcome back.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, great to be back, and great discussion, Jonathan. I'm really commiserating a lot with what you're talking about. I work in pharma, so we have a very large org, lots of different groups that are doing statistics and data science, and working with IT quite a bit. And we are adventuring in somewhat new frontier with, at least for my group, we're augmenting a lot of the Shiny apps and our pipelines are developing with AWS and the various services within it. And I'm kind of like the pioneer in my immediate group on a lot of this. I'm trying to, first of all, learn the best ways to do it myself, but also be able to empower my teammates to get up and running fairly quickly. So I didn't know, in your experience, how have you been kind of making sure that your data scientist on your team is able to leverage these technologies very well? I don't know if you have any advice about that.
Yeah, I mean, this kind of goes back to the kind of lab versus production environment. So we were able to get a lab environment set up for us where we had a lot of freedom in AWS. I mean, it's still behind our VPN. It's totally locked down. Like you can only get to it, from behind our firewalls, et cetera. But within that, we kind of got some freedom there. And then we just started spinning up our, a couple of servers, and we kind of built our studio server, and we built a couple of databases in AWS ourselves. And it was really helpful for us to learn exactly what we needed. And we've been doing that for a year now. And now that we're setting up a proper like prod and dev environment, we can kind of show it to our IT team and tell them to just basically clone it. So it has kind of a double payoff. Like we got to learn the skills, and then they get to clone it. We really just learned about it by following through the AWS docs and then doing some of their trainings. I mean, so one person here kind of already knew how to do all the stuff on AWS. The biggest roadblock we hit was honestly Git and GitLab and GitHub. Those were not blessed technologies here. Oh. So we had to use AWS's code commit, which was, I'm convinced we were the only team in the world using it, because I couldn't find any documentation on it, Stack Overflow, anywhere. But we eventually got GitLab. I shouldn't say we got it blessed. We found another team that had already brought it into the enterprise, and then we were able to kind of hook into that. So now we're using GitLab for all of our versioning. But that was a big roadblock for us. I mean, but I think the real key was we needed an environment where we could learn and kind of get things set up the way we wanted them. So somehow getting the freedom to have that lab set up. For us, it was we really just kind of told the truth, which was, if we have to wait for the dev environment, it's going to be 6 months before we can do anything, which was true. I mean, that was the actual timing it would have been. And that would have meant really we would have been sitting around for 6 months. So we needed the lab set up. And when we were able to get that done, and then from there we could kind of play around and learn how we wanted things set up. But getting the lab set up was critical.
Yeah, that was not the most pleasant experience for me to get my kind of current environment set up for our immediate group. Other IT groups kind of had their own AWS, like what I'll call partition, and
right.
I was given access to one of them, but then I was like, well, I can't really do stuff on there and mix it up with the stuff I'm doing in my group. So I finally got that set up, and now it's still have to go through a lot of process to get like the sub-services spun up, like a database and S3 and all that fun stuff. Once it's up there, I'm experimenting with things, but yeah, that's just, I don't think anybody's ever had a smooth time with that.
Yeah, no, it wasn't so like once we got the permissions, it wasn't so bad. But the journey continues, I would say, because I said, we still have more than once a week calls with IT and DevOps. Just it's like the one weekly call that we have to have, honestly, just to keep things rolling in the right direction.
Yeah, very similar for us. Yeah. Well, great insights. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
You touched on it just now a little bit, and I think you answered the next question, at least in the Q Allen's question around IT. But I do want to give it the opportunity to get the proper spotlight. So, Allen, if you want to ask your question with a little bit more context.
Yeah, sure. I think you've really been speaking to it pretty well. I think probably I'm sitting here feeling sympathy and empathy about a common scenario where we need lots of stuff from IT. IT has very limited resources, and often our interests don't necessarily align in a nice way. And so we have a pretty frequent negotiation of what can we get support for, what's kind of inbounds from a enterprise architecture perspective, where we tend to be pretty potentially ahead of where IT is ready to support. And so I guess curious is pushing the question a little bit. Have you had to have those conversations where you're bringing stuff to IT that they're really not ready to support yet, and they have concerns about, and for sure having leadership champions who can help in those conversations seems to be really critical. It's one of those places that as my team and as our function tries to scale up, we're going to need more of that official support, where to date, we've got enough kind of tacit support that we can get things done. But in the long term, we're going to need to carve out, this is our set of space, and IT supports us in a particular way. And we have lots of back and forth about that, about who owns what, who should own what, what's appropriate to support at given times. So it sounds like it's a common dilemma. So at least we're not alone in that, I guess.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I would say you're definitely not alone in that struggle. Yeah, I mean, one thing we were able to I guess negotiate or just kind of get squared away up front was that we kind of said, okay, once we get this lab environment set up, we're happy to migrate to a fully managed account by IT if they want to own it. But we kind of said, we're not migrating until we've confirmed that it works, because we can't just have everything break on us. So I guess we've kind of proceeded in phases, get the lab environment, get it producing value for the business, and then say, well, we can't just drop this, until there's something else viable in place. So yeah, you just kind of ladder up as you go.
I think we've experienced something similar where we can demonstrate that we're providing real value. Therefore, we sort of elbowed our way into that space, and now we have some value that we can provide. If you cut us off, it will have impact. But it's a real organizational kind of challenge and even political sort of dilemma sometimes around, being in this space and who has kind of domain control over decisions there, has been beyond all of the technical and methodological stuff that we really like to do. That's the organizational part that for me is just an ongoing challenge.
Yeah. Were you were you kind of starting from, like for you and your team, was this something you were kind of starting anew, or were you trying to take something existing in a new direction?
A little bit of both. We've had some independent capability that we were able to bring up because we knew at the time that there was no support more broadly in our enterprise to bring up the capability we needed. So we sort of stood up our, stack of tools pretty independently, but we realized that as we grow, we're going to need more support so that we can focus on the things that we think as a function, we provide lots of unique value, and we want to be able to rely on IT or other functions for the things that are less unique. So, we need them to handle configuring single sign-on, working with networking, doing firewall, doing security, and we focus on the things that we think we're more specialized in and good at. But they're a really limited resource, and they have lots and lots of things drawing on their focus. So, it's a constant kind of negotiation. Yeah.
Jonathan, how far out are you planning things with IT? So you have a weekly call. Are you talking to them about things going on 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now?
I wouldn't say a year from now. That's kind of way too far out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hypothetically.
Yeah, because if it's on the calendar for a year from now, that means realistically it's probably 2 years away. But yeah, I would say 3 to 6 months, because that's 3 to 6 months is really just how long it takes to I don't want to say get anything done, but to have like a start to finish new implementation, like done and blessed and handed off. It's 3 to 6 months. That even things that seem simple, like there's so many stakeholders involved, especially, we're part of a bank, so we always have a security layer that has to bless everything that we're doing. So we almost don't want to go too far beyond 3 to 6 months. Now that I think about it, there probably is 1 or 2 things on the calendar that's like in a year we need to have this stood up, and that mostly relates to kind of onboarding the Python team that sits next to us, because that kind of can't start until our environment is like fully built out, and then since they're a different team, there's like a different security layer that has to go into that. So yeah, 3 to 6 months is where we try to keep things.
Fantastic. Thank you. Ben, are you still there? I see that. I think I see your name. I have your question, but I at least wanted to give you a chance to ask it. So the question from Ben, do you have any thoughts on how to be a data science champion within a large organization?
I have a lot of thoughts about it, but
maybe the truncated version.
Yeah. So the first thing that we did was we tried to seek out other people who wanted to champion this stuff. Like the more people, we kind of found, like-minded people up and down the chain, like very junior people and very senior people too, who really wanted to champion this. So that was definitely step one, was finding other people. And then that was how we found this data science accelerator that we didn't know existed. So if anyone's at an org and you don't have a data science accelerator program, it's been super successful at Truist. So happy to talk to more people about what we've seen work well there. That originated in like the enterprise data organization. Other than that, it's been a ton of communicating, and most of what we're communicating is not really data science. It's more the value, like the value proposition of what we're doing and why we're doing it. like we always have one slide on like our technology stack that encompasses, you know, our studio, AWS, Snowflake, data vendors. That's all kind of put onto one slide of like a 10 slide deck. So other than that, we're always just talking about the value we're bringing, how it's going to help non-data scientists. That's like a huge theme at the bank. You know, it's always about lifting up teammates. You know, so if data science can help enhance other people's work, that's always like something people are very, very supportive of. Upskilling too. You know, a lot of people are interested in that, but it's a lot of work to help upskill people. But if you can find people who are willing to take on that work, I think that's a big win also. But that's really a lot of work. It's very time consuming, especially I mean at a big organization. That's been like a 9-month project, just kind of getting on the training calendar of, okay, we want to start upskilling people in data science, teaching people about R, et cetera. You know, creating the content and doing it, that's like the easy part. Getting it on the docket has been the hard part. But I definitely think that trying to position data science as something that helps other people has been really important for us. Just because, again, there's some hesitancy about data science. There's some hesitancy about this new thing, this new technology that could kind of take over what other people are doing. So, yeah, I think that's been helpful too. So that was positioning data science as something that helps other people, and finding other little pockets of data science champions has been a good way for us to approach things, and help us figure out who we need to talk to about different initiatives.
Yeah, we've done this. You know, this is our 5th time doing this now, and each time communication has come up as a core skill set, or, you know, a core activity. You know, just food for thought. I want to make sure that we get all the questions that were asked in before the time. We don't have a hard stop now, Jonathan. Obviously, you know, we're abiding to your schedule, but we don't have a hard stop. But for anyone who needs to jump, I want to make sure that we get to the questions in the audience. The final one that I have, and please continue asking questions, but the final one that I at least have on the list right now is from Alejandro. If you're still there, I'll give you a second to join and ask your question and introduce yourself.
Yes, thank you very much. Hi, everybody. I'm Alejandro from Italy. I work for a kind of data-driven company. It's called Cervet. We have this like problem with management, in the sense that we sell products and we make products that are deeply statistical models, machine learning models, data science pipelines, ad hoc projects. And I feel that we have this problem with project management. The senior managers handle things in the typical project management way. And on the other hand, I have some support from IT with more software development kind of management. And I feel that neither the two words fit with the data science kind of projects. How do you handle this? From what I heard, you have more or less this approach of data science, not software development only. Thank you.
Yeah, so yeah, that's a really good question. That was actually, strangely enough, another thing that I didn't really anticipate being a challenge here, but it was definitely something we had to overcome. Or I shouldn't say overcome, it was more just there was no kind of infrastructure in place, and there wasn't even like an informal way of doing things around that. I would definitely want to open this up to other people who I'm sure have plenty of experience with this, but for us, we've taken a very data sciencey approach, and we've just leaned really heavily on GitLab, honestly. So that was honestly a big step forward for us. There really wasn't even version control when we got here. We had to kind of bring that in, and then once we were able to get version control blessed and have it be part of what we did, we really just run all of our workflows around version control in GitLab. And we're a very small team. There's only 4 of us. So, and we have kind of autonomy in the way that we do things. So we just kind of run things honestly through GitLab, and we have our own, I guess you could call it project management, but really it's just kind of a project workflow that the 4 of us use. And, as we add more members to the team, we'll refine that workflow, and everyone will kind of use it from there. So, I mean, I guess this was an area we got maybe a little bit lucky. We got to kind of start from ground zero, and we didn't really need to rewrite any rules. I don't know if anyone else has had experience where they've had to kind of try to change a traditional workflow, but for us, that was, just we have our own workflow. It's all centered around Git, and that's been working for us so far.
Yeah, I'll let that breathe in case anyone wants to hop in. Give it a few seconds.
I mean, I
Go ahead.
Like the project management side, I mean, I know what you mean. It's tricky, right? Because like at the end of the day, you're trying to target deliverable, and some of the early pieces you're kind of exploring, so you don't actually know what you would actually end up developing to hit that deliverable in production. I mean, I struggle on the exploratory data side. I mean, you might have a bit of a different use case because you're selling that product immediately. It's tricky. Like, so I tend to like do small iterations and show value early, and then say, hey, you know what? The next iteration, we're going to have to try something completely different. And here you go. We kind of buffer a lot early on the like the model design piece. And then because implementation typically after that is quite quick. And then project managers typically understand that kind of that piece. But yeah, it's tough, right? Because you don't have something prescriptive that you're going to implement, which is what most project managers are used to, So
yeah, exactly. Actually, well, thanks for the answers, both of you. We have this like different languages or objectives that managers want concrete things, and you say, okay, we've made lots of progress in the model, fine tuning or in the exploratory or whatever. And okay, so it is ready. What % of ready? I don't know. We are making progress.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough. I buffer. So I do small iterations, and then after like 3 or 4, I would assume that we basically have something close that can be prescriptive. But like the last one is typically running over a historical time period to make sure that if we were to actually implement this in production on a wider scale, it will run. But the first 3 or so are on a much smaller sample size. I mean, it's not bulletproof, because the folks are used to a much more of a prescriptive style of implementation, right? So, yeah.
Thank you very much. I will try buffering a little bit more. Thanks.
Alejandro, one thing I ran into with like Scrum and Agile is people don't seem to remember what Agile is supposed to mean. They take it as more of we have stand-ups and we have specific tasks. So having those conversations has helped somewhat. Be like, well, the purpose of Agile is to allow iteration, and we don't always know because it's exploratory. And data science is very different from your regular computer science and product development.
I completely agree. That's why I don't feel when they propose the Agile or Scrum to fit in, because it's kind of, okay, but I cannot iterate this way, or my task was this one, but now I'm over there. So yeah, it's kind of tricky. That's why my question was, is there an alternative to typical project management and Scrum or Agile? But I feel like we're on the same boat, everybody. Thanks.
All right, to finalize the formal questioning again, we don't have a hard stop, but people tend to, ease out, but please stay on. Jonathan, one question we've been asking our experts is, what would you recommend focusing on for data science teams or data science leaders, over the next arbitrary sort of, number of days, year, to set themselves up for success?
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess I'm repeating myself a little bit, but for us at the bank, it's all about like the cross functionality that we're working on right now. So, in a year, we probably won't be able to kind of hide behind the fact that we're a new team and we need to run lean and we need to have time to do stuff. So like our enterprise data organization, our IT team, even things like our recruiters, in the talent pipeline, like all those things are going to basically become little parts of what we do. So I think for us, that's the next step over the next year is strengthening all that stuff. I think we're a year in and we've reached the point that everyone gets what we're doing. They kind of see the value in what we're doing. But for long-term success, I think the cross-functional relationships are going to be a big focus, which is a lot of time. It's a lot of meetings. So it's a lot of time with hands off keyboards, which is just like a different phase of what we're doing. Other than that, I mean, since we're in the finance world, which is probably totally different than most other places. But yeah, we're really focused on setting up a good data lake. Like we don't that's a big, I shouldn't even say data lake, database, like a good database. That's another a big focus for us over the next year, which I'm sure most people on this call are already well beyond that phase, but we're kind of building everything from scratch.
Do you have any tips for folks who, and sorry if I cut you off, do you have any tips for folks who may not be running the team or the head of the department to become better cross-functionally?
I mean, better cross-functionally. Yeah, I mean, let's see, I'm trying to think. It's a really good question. I mean, at least for us, there's no shortage of tasks that need to be done in that area. And it's very, very time consuming. And honestly, I find most data scientists don't want to do it. It's not really why anyone would say they want to be a data scientist, right? So it's not considered the fun stuff of data science. No one's really going to ask about what you're actually working on. So I guess I would just say, do it, put your hand up and do it and get involved in those conversations. I don't know, Moody, you might have some thoughts on this. I'm sure you've had a lot of cross-functional work. I find most people just don't want to do it because it's really not like data science.
Like you mean cross-functional, like working, trying to like say move up the organization? Is that what you mean?
No. Well, so what I mean more is that, I spend as much time talking to our enterprise data organization as I do the people who are like technically on my team.
Oh, right? I see.
And I spend as much time talking to IT, who again, they're technically a separate team than actually like talking. Yeah. And I'm not talking about data science with them. I'm talking about the infrastructure we need and things like that.
If you're not, you or Jonathan, right? If you're someone more junior, how would you go about that?
Yeah, I think Jonathan and I are probably pretty similar in that sense. And I think you actually said it earlier, Jonathan. I'll resonate what you said. Talk about the value, not how to get there, right? Like I never talk about like to the business. We talk about like a product being released or some revenue potential, like to the folks who are paying it. And we're not really talking about R, Python, or even a model at that point. It's just the fact that there is some opportunity that we're going to go after. And the fastest way to go after that is this, right? And this is sort of how we will take the data and then combine it and then push it out. And then you kind of are committed to some time frame. So the business will understand that, right? Now, on the other side, when you like to talk to the sort of the tech and DevOps, I think maybe I'm a bit lucky in a way because they've kind of gone warm to the whole like R, Python, like environment. Like we also use AWS, and then we can kind of build against a more, I guess, a more rigorous like source safe, basically source code management and stuff. Now, yeah, like Jonathan, I guess to your point, like, yeah, when you sort of align with those folks, the conversation is not about data science for us, it's about the products. And then, you know, can we improve, for example, indexing on some of our databases to enhance like a pull for a job, right? Or trying to look at the data lake. We have the opposite problem. I think we have a lot of data lakes. So like, how do you improve that? Because the quality of the content coming in needs to kind of get better. And that's a much trickier discussion because obviously there's a processes on that side to get the data in and push it out. So yeah, you almost never talk about, funny enough, you almost never really talk about like the cool stuff you've done, like, which is the model piece, until like you've kind of documented it. And you're, for me, if you're on a sales call, if I'm selling to Jonathan, for example, I talk about the model piece, but that's like, you know, but that's it. Yeah, you kind of have to move up, I guess, or to talk, you have to speak different languages, one data, one software engineering, and one business domain. But to sell yourself, to get a project and move up, you're talking business 100% time, you know, business and cost. Yeah.
All right. So Jonathan, where can people find you on the internet or get in contact with you?
You can always find me on LinkedIn. I'm constantly posting little R snippets on there. So yeah, that's the best place to connect with me. And feel free to reach out anytime if anyone wants to talk about R, finance, etc. That's what we do.
And shameless plug for you. I think you've written a book.
Yeah. I mean, I wrote a book a long time ago called Reproducible Finance with R. So it's been 3 years now. Originated as a series of blog posts on R views. So thank you, Joe Rickard, if you're on this call. But if you're not, maybe you'll see the recording. So yeah, that was a long time ago. But we might crank out another book this year to kind of update some code and talk more about the macro economy. But yeah, looking forward to connecting with everyone.
Fantastic. Yeah. Let me real quick, just for anyone who wants to, put your LinkedIn profile in the chat. And while I do that, we do these if this is your first time joining, we do these every Thursday at noon. The Zoom link is always the same. So maybe exciting news is we're working now on just getting the recording sort of uploaded in full to our YouTube channel, so folks can go back and watch them. That due date, or we're trying to be able to do that sometime within the next few weeks. But I put in Jonathan's LinkedIn profile in the chat. But yeah, thank you so much, Jonathan, for joining us and dropping some knowledge.
Sure, my pleasure. Thanks, everyone.
And thank you, Moody, for the significant contributions.
Thank you, Moody.
Take care. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Yeah, hopefully see everyone next Thursday.